If I had my life to live over again, I would have made a rule to read some poetry and listen to some music at least once every week. A man who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life. Ignorance and frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. It is those who know little, not those who know much, who was positively assert that this or that problem will never be solved by science. If the misery of the poor be caused not by the laws of nature, but by the institution, great is our sign. We stopped looking for monsters under our bed when we realized that they are inside us. The love for all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man. I am not apt to follow blindly the lead of other men. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, not the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change. The mystery of the beginning of all things is insoluble by us, and I for one must be content to remain an agnostic. The highest possible stage in moral culture is when we recognize that we ought to control our thoughts. Blushing is the most peculiar and most human of all expressions. Intelligence is based on how efficient a species become at doing the things they need to survive. One general law leading to the advancement of all organic beings, namely multiply, vary, let the strongest live and the weakest die. Besides love and sympathy, animals inhabit another qualities connected with the social instincts which in us would be called moral. We must, however, acknowledge, as it seems to me, that man, with all his noble qualities, still bears in his bodily frame the indelible stamp of his lowly origin. Man selects only for his own good, nature only for that of the being which she tends. We can allow satellites, planets, sun, universe, nay, whole system of universe to be governed by laws, but the smallest insect we wish to be created at once by special act. Nothing is easier than to admit in words the truth of the universal struggle for life. The more difficult, at least I have found it so, than constantly to bear these conclusions in mind. Great is the power of steady misrepresentation. I see no good reasons why the views given in the volume should stop the religious views of anyone. Freedom of thoughts is best promoted by the gradual illuminations of man's mind, which follows from the advance of science. There is no fundamental difference between man and animals in their ability to feel pleasure and pain, happiness and misery. To kill an error is as good a service as, and sometimes even better than, the establishing of a new truth and facts. It is always advisable to perceive clearly our ignorance. I am not the least afraid to die. We are not here concerned with hopes or fears, only with truth as far as our reason permits us to discover it. The very essence of instinct is that it's followed independently of reason. We will now discuss in a little more detail the struggle for existence. A scientific man ought to have no wishes, no affections, a mere heart of stone. In conclusion, it appears that nothing can be more improving to a young nationalist than a journey in distant countries.